All right, so we're back again for our module 2. So, kind of recapping a little bit. This is our series on stress. Well, we've already covered the hormone, some of the hormones of stress, and we went into a little bit of the neurology. What we're going to be doing today, we're going to be diving even deeper into the neurology. So, if you missed number 1, just so that all this will make sense. Please go back, watch number 1, and then this is the second we're going to continue on. This is the second of a 3-part series. So let's get rolling in this. So really important note, none of this information is for educational purposes only. This doesn't replace anything or your doctor-patient relationship. So a little recap on this entire course. Our topics, we've already discussed types of stress in Module 1, so if you missed that, go back to that. Effects of our overall health, the effects of how it affects our hormones, how stress affects our nervous system, and that's what we're diving into today. We covered a little bit, and we touched on it a little bit on Module 1. We're going to be going a little bit deeper. Stress hormones and their link in weight gain. We started talking and touched on that with the first module, and we're going to be talking about real strategies for you to control and own this stress, and we can change our hormones. So, well, what we have is we have our nervous system, and so we talked a little bit about the brain, but this chart over here, this is an example of how our brain is this master control unit. It's the control computer. It controls every cell, every function in your body is controlled by your brain. Your brain controls your heart, your liver, your gut. Yeah, you can't separate it out. And so our brain communicates with the rest of our body through a thing that we call the spinal cord. And so nerves exit in between out of our holes in our spine called the foramen, and they go out and they go to different parts of our body. And so what I want to do is I kind of want to separate it out, because we were talking about stress's effect on the nervous system. And so since stress does affect our nervous system so strongly, there's no part of your body that it's not going to affect, because once again, the brain is the master control system that controls every function of our body. We can't separate out the two. But in our brain, we have two sides of our nervous system, and so I like to call it the gas pedal or the brake. And so breaking that down, we have the sympathetic nervous system and we have the parasympathetic nervous system. And so we talked about that bear in the first one, where we get that stress response. So if a bear comes out, you're going to have to fight it, or you're going to have to flight or run from it. So that's the sympathetic response right here. The sympathetic side right there is the one that's responsible for raising cortisol. If you remember the stress hormone, that is to keep us alive in a life or death, fight or flight situation. The problem is, especially with everything that's going on with our lives today, we get stuck in that mode, like the bear is always chasing us, and that's where it gets really unhealthy, because we want to spend most of our time over here in the parasympathetic side, which is called your rest and digest. And so that's where our body can build itself up. That's where we can digest our food, absorb our nutrients. That's where that's where our body's in a building mode. And so the sympathetic side, or gas pedal, is always go, go, go. We've got to run or we got to fight. Where the other sides are braking. It's our relaxing. It's our rest and digest system. And so the sympathetic part, kind of like what I was talking about, it's going to control the stimulation of our fight or flight response. It's needed for short-term survival, and that's the key right there. Both of these, you can't separate out the two. You need your fight or flight, and you need your parasympathetic. It's when we get stuck in that constant fight or flight is whenever it becomes when it becomes unhealthy, and we need to be in this rest or digest. We need to be that in the long term. We need to spend more of our time in this parasympathetic state. And so there's things that we can do to monitor this and to check and see how our system's balanced. It's almost like a teeter-totter. They've got to balance each other and balance each other out. And there's this thing called heart rate variability. And so what's awesome about heart rate variability is it has so many applications. It has applications for how are you managing, how is your nervous system responding to stress. And like we talked about before, exercise is a stress. Exercise is just a really healthy stress. We're doing a healthy stress or stimulus so that our body can build herself back up stronger. But on the other hand, especially with our really high intensity or even endurance athletes, there's a thing that called overtraining syndrome. And so that's where it flips from being healthy to it can start being unhealthy. And so what heart rate variability does is thanks to technology that we have, yeah, there's apps and they're highly accurate in research that can be downloaded on your iPhone or if you have an Android, but you simply use something like a heart strap or kind of like a heart rate monitor, and it connects directly to your phone, and you can get accurate measurements. Used to, and I'm not even talking long ago. I'm talking 15 years ago. I mean, like heart rate variability monitors were super expensive, big, bulky lab equipment, but we can get it on our iPhone now. Now we have to pay attention to the accuracy, and has there been research? One of my favorite companies that I always recommend to people is a company called Elite HRV, and so they've actually done studies on those. And so what this is everyone's seen on an EKG with the heart, the little up and down lines, and what this is the QRS. And so everyone always thinks that the heart just beats at the same rhythm and that it's just constantly beating, and they've actually found through research that's not the case. There's small variabilities in between each one of these waves. And so when you're in a fight or flight, it's beat, 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 and that's more of your steady beat when you're stuck in this fight or flight, because you have this seesaw. So your sympathetics is going to raise your heart rate because you've got to pump and oxygenate your body. You've got to get more blood to your muscles so that you can run. And that's kind of what we touched on about it's not always a bad thing. If you're going to do a big presentation or perform, that higher heart rate is going to oxygenate our bodies so that we can harness that so we can be more efficient. But what this is going to check, the parasympathetics always dampening and pushing it down. It's a seesaw effect. So that's going to cause this variability as the parasympathetic is able to dampen that. So a higher HRV reading is typically associated with being healthier. Now, if we're exercising, we're overtraining, you're going to see that HRV drop. And so we can actually we'll dive deeper in another course on using things and technologies such as HRV to monitor health. That's a whole nother thing, but I just want to point out that there's things that we can do that we can monitor and see how well our body's tangible numbers, how well our body's handling this stress. But the one of the big things that's where we want to access when we're talking about our parasympathetics is our vagus nerve. And so the vagus nerve's one of our cranial nerves, and it's called vagus because the word means in Greek is the wandering nerve. It goes everywhere. And so it's one of the biggest contributors to our parasympathetic health because it's going to control our gut motility. It's going to control gut issues. So if we're having digestive issues, a lot of it could be as parasympathetic tone comes down and we're stuck in that fight or flight, vagus nerve tone comes down, which is going to affect things like digestion. It's going to affect motility. It can cause constipation and all kinds of issues. And there's things that we can do and exercises we can do to help stimulate the vagus nerve to help try to balance and bring up that parasympathetic system. One thing that you can do is gargling water really strongly. That stimulates the back of the throat, which is controlled by the vagus nerve, and that helps with vagal tone. There's other things that we can do. A lot of times we'll do vagal nerve stimulation, but there's things that we can do to help with this vagal tone. But one thing that because everyone talks about what with a chiropractor, and that's what we are, the well, we're actually more concerned with the nervous system than we are the back. And everyone thinks about neck pain, back pain. And as a chiropractor, we do handle that, but we're also really concerned with the nervous system. And so whenever I've shown people this picture, I have never met someone, when we talk about this young, vibrant lady who's got good posture, who's standing upright, compared to the little old lady who's starting to hunch over, whose nervous system is healthier. And so we inherently know this, and we see this, and we know that as we start to lose our battle against gravity, and that's really what posture is, that has negative consequences and effect on our nervous system. And that's one of the things that we're looking at with as a chiropractor. And where a lot of this begins is when we're children, or when we're babies, you start to crawl first, you start to raise your head, we start to stand up, and we're always trying to get to this good posture. But all we do in society is we're stuck behind computers, especially now. Everyone's starting to go back to work, but we've been stuck at home in terrible posture, head forward, doing work for home. And so what they found is our head compared to our neck is this really big structure, and our head's really heavy compared to our neck. And so what happens is as we lose this posture and it goes forward, biomechanically, all the research has said that's like adding weight to your head. So if I told people I want them to hold this bowling ball way out from their body, and you're going to hold that all day, your shoulder is going to be killing you by the end of the day. And that's exactly what's happening to our neck or back. It's leading to headaches. In our practice, we've actually seen a big increase of this just from bad workplace ergonomics, because we've all been stuck at home with this quarantine. But it's happening to our kids. And so I remember as a kid, we didn't have near as many books. We didn't carry all this stuff home, but our backpack posture with our kids is super important. And now they're actually starting to say that that sitting is like the new smoking. And the reason why they're saying that is because of how negative this poor posture affects our health. But there's also a new thing that they're calling text neck. And so all of our kids are spending so much time on their tablets, on their phones, looking down, and it's creating this poor posture. And we've got to start getting it upright. I always tell my patients, raise your screens up. We want to keep it up high so we're keeping this good posture. With this kid right here, we want this backpack up higher. You can see he's got a little bit of forward head posture, and we want some better posture, but you see how much worse it gets when you've got all this weight down here on his back. So we need to really pay attention to our kids, because it's starting with them. If the poor posture and all this starts at them, we're going to have a lifetime of it having negative effects on our children's health. But what happens is we can have misaligned or fixated, just meaning stuck joints. It's kind of like if you look over here at this hinge, that hinge isn't moving right. And so that's what we're looking at as a chiropractor, as well as your posture, global alignment. And so the effect it can have, and this is a nerd alert, I promise these are going to be, I don't like using big words, but it's going to cause three things. And so it's going to cause dyskinesia, disafferentation, and dysautonomia is what the research is showing us. Dyskinesia, it's like kinesiology. It's how the joint moves. So if we have alignment issues, if that joint's not moving, that joint's not going to be able to move right. Dys just means it's not the improper function of. So the improper movement is what that's saying. That's going to lead to, inside all of our joints, we have all these receptors. That's how you can close your eyes, and you can try this. You can close your eyes right now and raise your arm above your head. And your brain knows your arm is above your head. And why does it know it's up there? Is because all of your joints and your shoulder and your elbow, all of these have these receptors that's communicating with your brain and telling it where it is. Because our brain needs to know where our body is at all times. And so if we decrease this stimulation that's going to our brain, because our brain, these joints aren't moving. Our brain's used to feeling these joints. Now it's now the signal's it's not getting as much signal. That's going to lead to dysautonomia, which is your automatic nervous system. And that's that parasympathetic, sympathetic, fight or flight, rest and digest is what that's going to lead to. And so what they found is that movement is super healthy for our brain. We need movement. And if you look at kids that have things like ADD, what do they want to do? Like they're fidgety. Their brain is just dying for stimulation. They want to move around. They want to get the stimulation. But if we have that dyskinesia, remember, not moving right, it's going to lead to disafferentation. And that's exactly what I was just telling you about. The disafferentation is just simply your brain is not getting the signal from those receptors that it needs. The movement is like food for the brain. And so what we have is we have proprioception. Proprioception is just these receptors telling your body where it is. That's how you can stand up, you can close your eyes. Your brain is feeling where your body is, it's feeling the ground, and it's getting that good, healthy reception. Your brain knows where it's at. Without this, we're not able to shunt and block pain. And so that's what nociception is. That's our bad signals. That's the no bueno, it hurts. And so that's how, as chiropractors, that's how when we step in, when we're doing our adjustments, we're doing our alignments, that's how we're helping with the neck pain. That's how it's making it feel better. That's how we're helping with the low back pain, is we're giving that good, healthy brain, aligning it, letting the body recommunicate with itself, and it's helping shunt or shut down this nociception. Because your proprioception, or your good, healthy input, that's like dial-up or high-speed internet. It gets the brain. Your body has to know where it's at, or it can lead to injury. If you step off the curb, your brain has to know where your body is to balance, or you'll roll your ankle and you'll hurt it. Your nociception, or your pain, that's like low-speed internet. So all this proprioception, because you're getting stimulation from both, but the good information is always beating it there to the brain until we have these misalignment problems, these fixated segments, these segments not moving right. And then the third input is we have our vestibular, which is our balance or our coordination. And so this proprioception and our brain are working together to help coordinate our movements, to help us with our balance. And all these are super important for the health of our immune system, or health of a nervous system, sorry. And so this is straight out of a article written by a PhD by the name of Punjabi. But what he's showing in this, so I just labeled this. So these are the intact receptors in the joint. And so that's the joints. It's communicating with the neuromuscular control unit. That's just the brain, is all that is. So if we have this good information coming to the brain, then we get normal muscle response, and there's no adverse consequences. And so what they found is they intentionally went in and studied these injured joints. And what they found was when you injure these joints, you also injure receptors. And I see this with my athletes all the time. You have the guy with the weak ankle. He's been to PT. He's rehabbed the crap out of it. He's done all these exercises, but he keeps rolling that ankle. And so one of the big things that I see with chronic injuries like that is nothing was ever done to help reconnect the brain with that ankle. They just did simple muscle strengthening, but we never worked on that balance, that coordination, that recommunication, because our brain is just like any skill. It's like playing the piano. The more you do it, the more efficient you are. The less you do it, the less efficient it is. It's the same way with that. If those pathways aren't firing, they become less efficient. So that's where with chronic injuries, we also have to work on our balance, our coordination, and reconnect this input, because what happens is if these are corrupted due to injury, it's going to lead to chronic pain, tissue inflammation, and adverse consequences is what they found in this journal. And then kind of like what we were talking about before, we also, on the other hand, need this good brain health communication, because it's also going to raise our sympathetics, our fight and our flight, and it's going to decrease our ability to maintain a healthy state of our nervous system, and to be able to fight off this stress. And one of the biggest places that we found these receptors is up here at the top of the neck. That's one of the most important parts. So especially if we're getting this tension, these headaches up here, if you look down here, this is how many receptors they found per gram of tissue. And so what they found was, so you have like your big lat down here, your traps, your muscles, but these little bitty muscles up here, right at the base of your head, because think about how important it is for you to know where your head is whenever you're moving around, when you're balancing, when you're keeping your eyes on the horizon. Those had over 190 to 242 per gram of tissue. That is how important it is to have proper neck alignment, and how much it can negatively affect our health. But Nobel Prize winner Dr. Roger Sperry said he found that 90% of stimulation is nutrition in our brain generated by movement of the spine. And that is the reason why there is so many receptors inside all the joints inside our spine. We need that proper movement and that proper alignment for have a healthy nervous system. And so these were done by osteopaths, and they found that the adjustment can actually influence the automatic nervous system to increase the parasympathetic, remember that rest and digest function, and decrease our fight and flight activity. And so that's what we're going to be covering for this module. What we're going to be doing in the third module, so be sure and tune into that. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be tying everything together, going to be wrapping everything up. We're going to be going into the chemical part, and then we're going to be talking about level strategies for you to do at home to help own this thing we call stress. Catch you in the next one.